3 years ago, I made a video where I ranked all the classics that I had ever read at the time. Now, it's the second most viewed video on my channel. I think 32% of my subscribers come from that one video. So, hi, I hope you're enjoying my content still. I thought I would revisit my rankings from that video and see if my feelings have changed about any of these and include some of the classics that I've read since then, because it was, 3 years is a long time. It was so funny looking back on that video. I mean, so much has changed. I'm more comfortable and confident on camera. I've got better audio and better lighting. Better camera is still to come. You know, next time I do this, hopefully, or unhopefully, you'll be able to see every pore on my face. I'm just going to get straight into it. I've kept the tiers the same. I've got I'd rather watch paint dry on the bottom, then Overhyped, then She's Cute, then A Good Time, and then God tier. Again, just like last time, none of these books within the tiers are in any particular order. I don't have the personality to be able to order them like that. I have lots of favourites, and some of these books are so different from each other within the tiers that it would be impossible. So I'm going to get straight into it and get to the I'd rather watch paint dry tier. And unsurprisingly, the first book in this tier is The Professor by Charlotte Bronte. This remains unchanged. My feelings about Charlotte Bronte remain unchanged. This is a novella about, it's a very autobiographical novella about a young girl who goes to Belgium to teach in a school, and she falls in love with one of the professors there. It just doesn't scratch the surface of what Charlotte is capable writing-wise, and it's also so self-indulgent and crammed full of all the isms and phobias that I complain about all the time in Charlotte's writing. Racism, xenophobia, anti-Catholicism, fat phobia, internalized misogyny. There is so much in here. There's nothing really of substance in this. I mean, she's living out a fantasy where, you know, Charlotte and the man she was in love with, Constantin Heger, and he leaves his wife. That's her whole fantasy. That was her whole fantasy. Criticising Charlotte Bronte is as harsh as I get, so I thought I'd start out with that and get it over with. Next is The Outsider by Camus, and this has gone down several tiers. It was in She's Cute. I understand, look, that I know the writing is good. I'm just not willing to overlook the, colonizer killing an Arab man in his home country thing. The Arab man doesn't even have a name. And then we sort of have to read his inner monologue as he decides, whether or not he is actually a murderer or not. You know what? I watched You and I had to stop You at a certain point because it was too much. And that's, another reason why it's gone down so much. The writing is not good enough for me to overlook all of that stuff, and in fact I shouldn't have anyway in the first place. Next, I've got Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This has actually moved down a tier from last time. It was in Overhyped. Americans in my comments have come at me for this, but I struggle emotionally connecting with a lot of these American classics, and sort of emotionally resonating and connecting with books is really important for me. It's about ranch life in California in the Great Depression, and the racial slurs and stereotypes is just not something I like to read, and I would never reread this book either, and so that's why it's so low. So next is the Overhyped tier, and we've got a new entrant into this tier. Yes, Jane Eyre has moved up from I'd Rather Watch Paint Dry into Overhyped. Now, Charlotte's gothic governess romance has historically not been my favourite. I've ranted about it on numerous occasions. I still don't like it that much. I mean, I still hate Rochester. I don't like the plot and a lot of the writing, but I can acknowledge, having reread some of it as an adult, that there is some really great writing in there. But again, that, Charlotte's problems that I have with all of her work still remains in Jane Eyre, and I just can't overlook that. There are moments where I really do like Jane and see where she's coming from. So while it's an improvement, I'm still struggling to finish my reread because I do think it is overhyped. I'm so sorry. Next up is The Great Gatsby. Surprise, surprise, I'm not the biggest fan of the book about the party rich boy. Look, it is a good book. I enjoyed reading it. Nick Carraway as a narrator is great, but I do think it's massively overhyped. I mean, I'm British, like I was saying, the whole great American novel thing doesn't mean that much to me. And while it was enjoyable to read, Gatsby's world and, Daisy and Tom and everything, all the plot stuff that was going on, still overhyped. Next is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. Dystopia has always been a great genre to read, but I do think that this personally is overhyped. The world building is great. Obviously, it's a warning about a world where, everyone is genetically modified and there's an intelligence-based social hierarchy. Like any good dystopia. It predicted, IVF, conditioning, all of that stuff. The ending didn't help the way I felt about this book. I didn't really get on with it, and I just found myself overwhelmed by the plot of it all, and so unchanged. And next is a book that's gone down a tier. It was in She's Cute. It's Fiesta, The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. This book takes us to bullfighting Spain with our narrator Jake as he falls in love with Brett Ashley. She is beautiful and sensual, but she's also very unattainable, and this explores love, obsession, jealousy. It's also quite plot light. So if that's not what you're into, be cautious with that. Hemingway, I think, is one of my favorite writers in terms of like the rhythm of the prose that he writes. It's very unique, and so I always have a good reading experience. I always really enjoy reading his books, but it's not as good as other things that I read by him, and it's just she's overhyped, I think. Next is the tier that is She's Cute, and I'm starting off with 2 Jane Austen novels. The first is Northanger Abbey, and this is, it's a book about a young heroine who loves Gothic novels and who finds herself semi in one, or she wants to find herself in one, and that's part of the problem. She ends up in Bath, this place of debauchery. She's really, really young and naive and innocent, and then she's invited to Northanger Abbey by her love interest, and this is just such a cute novel about novels and what makes a heroine. Austen's take on the, a satirical Gothic. It's, a fabulous love interest in Henry Tilney, even if the age gap is a little concerning. I love it, but again, it suffers from just being not as good as her other works, and She's Cute, unchanged. And then next up, we've got Mansfield Park. I love Fanny Price. I think she deserves the world, but she did not get what she deserved in this book. At least I don't think so. She definitely deserved a better love interest than her first cousin. Ew. She's the poor relation who's come to live in this grand old house, and the dynamics between all the different people who live in the household, fantastic to read. Some of these characters are amazing. The Crawford siblings, a great introduction into this whole scene, and they really shake things up. They shake the whole family up. The family dynamic is great, and like I said, it's the whole cousin marriage thing, and I love Fanny, and she deserves better. I just can't go higher than She's Cute with this one, sorry. Next is Where Angels Fear to Tread by Ian Forster. I love Ian Forster, and this is another one that just suffers again by comparison to his other novels. I really enjoyed reading it. I might actually reread this because, it has that English people in Italy theme that we have in A Room with a View, but and also an English woman trying to, find her way and find her place, her family trying to bring her back to England. It's cute, but it doesn't pack a punch like his other novels have, so it remains in She's Cute. Next is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jan Utterson is our narrator. He's a lawyer, and his friend, scientist Dr. Jekyll, has bitten off more than he can chew. And reports of a mysterious Mr. Hyde, who is supposedly, really violent, has Utterson investigating. And this is a story about the nature of good and evil, right and wrong, humanity. It discusses the themes well. It's very well written. It's quite short, so it means the depth to which it can explore things is lacking, but I can't fault what it did do. And so it's in She's Cute. And next is Villette by Charlotte Bronte. Charlotte Bronte reworked a professor into Villette, and so this is another story about a young girl who moves to Belgium and to be a teacher at a school, and there's a love story in there as well, and plenty of other characters. My criticism, again, I always have with Charlotte's writing, but we get an expanded story in Villette, and we get a more developed main character in Lucy Snow, if a little flat, but, more storylines and characters. I want to say that I was on the verge of putting this in Overhyped, but I really love the ending, and I love Lucy Snow and how she ends up. So just made the cut into She's Cute. And next is House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. This is a sort of New York high society novel about Lily Bart, who is beautiful, witty, sophisticated, used to a certain standard of living. She's in a unique position of, being courted by new money, but also accepted by old money, and she needs to sort of marry to preserve her standard of living and maintain her lifestyle, but she finds herself unable to take that step, and it's a brilliant exploration of the sort of moral and societal expectations on women at the time, as well as the economic position that women find themselves in. She's cute, same as last time, but I think rereading this closer to Lily's age, frankly, I might have different feelings about it, so we'll see. Next, I've got 2 Le Carre novels, the first being Call for the Dead. It's the first Le Carre I read. I wanted to read the Smiley books in order. The Smiley books all follow George Smiley. It's a Cold War era spy novel. In this one, we've got Samuel Fenton, who's a Foreign Office agent, and Smiley was just doing a background check on him, quite routine. But however, despite, Smiley thinking, oh, case is going to be closed tomorrow, Samuel Fenton commits suicide. And so Smiley has to investigate that. And this is a really good novel. It is not the best Le Carre, which is why it's here, but definitely a necessary read. I recommend reading the Smiley novels in order, and yeah, this has actually gone down a tier from A Good Time. Next is Murder of Quality. This has remained in She's Cute. This is the second George Smiley novel, and we're taking a look at an elite private school in this era. Smiley goes to assist an old colleague who receives a letter from a woman called Stella Rode, who's convinced her husband is trying to kill her. So Mr. Rode, being a master at the school, Smiley comes to investigate. I enjoyed this book massively. It's different from the first one, which is what you want in a series like that. Not the best I read from him, so She's Cute, same as last time. Great Expectations is next by Charles Dickens. Universally loved, I feel. It's the story of Pip, who is an orphan in rural England, and after encounters with escaped convict Magwitch and a reclusive Miss Havisham, Pip receives a mysterious fortune which completely changes his life. He gets to live the life of a gentleman and have a profession if he wants. And he, moves to London and is navigating this newfound life. This book really shows the dark side of Victorian London, like many Dickens novels do. And, Pip's coming of age, self-discovery, it's a must read, I would say. I think, a reread as an adult might push this up a tier, but yeah, it's down from A Good Time, actually, last time, but she's cute. Next up, I've got a couple of novels by Vita Sackville-West, whom I love. The Edwardians is first, and we follow Sebastian in this one, who is the heir to a country estate. It's based on Vita's own life growing up at Knowle, who, she really loved that place, but she was unable to inherit it because she was a woman. This was sort of a lifelong bitterness that she had to kind of swallow. Sebastian is very young and handsome. He's very romantic, and he makes the rounds of all the society parties and, does all the traditional stuff, but his heart isn't in it. He feels very disillusioned by the whole decadence of Edwardian society. And, he has everything, but a new world is knocking on his door and he's feeling the pull a little bit. I really like this. It's clear how much Vita's love for Knowle seeps into her writing, the way that she's brought it to life, and her conflicts about inheritance, albeit in a different way. This has actually gone down a tier from A Good Time. What has not gone down a tier is Heritage by Vita Sackville-West, because I think this is a new entrance into the tier. The main character of Heritage is Ruth Peniston, and she was born and brought up in Kent, rather like Vita herself, but she has ancestry from a Spanish Roma woman, so she's got, dark eyes, dark hair, Vita was inspired by her own heritage here. She had, I think her grandmother was half Roma, or at least claimed to be, but anyway, back to Ruth. There's somebody called Mallory who's staying in the house as a guest of the family, and Mallory falls in love with Ruth, and, there's a love triangle. It's a portrait of rural Kent, very deftly drawn, but also filled with this sort of passionate love and longing and heartbreak that Vita pulls from her heritage. And yeah, it's a real nice read and definitely worthy of She's Cute. And next we've got Lord of the Flies. Now, Lord of the Flies is such an important book, and it might be because I studied this book at school and so analysed it to death, but it's got to stay in the She's Cute tier. A bunch of students, all boys I should say, are taking a trip by plane when they crash on an island, and they have to work out how they're going to survive and get back home. It's a study on human nature. At first they see it as so much fun, but it sort of quickly takes a turn and the boys lose a sense of acceptable behaviour. It's definitely worth reading, not one I'd pick up for pleasure now, because I read it to school and analysed it to death, but yeah, it's unchanged. Next, we've got A Good Time, the fourth tier. Forget Jane Eyre. This is the novel that tells you what the life of a Victorian governess was actually like. It's Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. And also the life of a, educated but unmarried woman, because obviously becoming a governess was, one of the only acceptable professions left for women who were sort of higher status, highly educated. Agnes Grey is a woman who steps up to help her family when they fall on hard times. So she's quickly disillusioned about what the job is like when she works for the first family, but it's in the second family where she really blossoms and she meets a young curate called Mr. Weston. It's based on Anne's time as a governess. She was kind of the only one of her siblings who could really crack it and had the temperament for it. And I say that as someone who would be an absolute horrific governess. I love Anne Bronte, and a reread of this actually might push it up into God tier, but yeah, it's a good time. Next is The Castle of Otranto. It is the first Gothic novel, and for that reason, it just goes straight up there. So many of the tropes and stock characters that, you know, we come to love from the Gothic tradition, but also beyond, comes from this novel. I've made a whole video about this, so I will link it. But it starts with a wedding where the groom dies outside the door of a church, and everything kind of spills from there, lots of supernatural elements. The lack of quotation marks was a shock, but I really did enjoy it. It's not knock your socks off amazing enough to be in God tier, but I think if I had to create a required reading list for the English canon of literature of, you know, must read books, this would be on it. Definitely. The kind of twists and turns, that it was quite short, but the action just kept going and kept going. So next up is the highest ranked Charlotte Bronte novel. It is Shirley. Shirley is a rich woman of means, of independent means, you know. She is the heiress of her own estate. Her friend Caroline, by contrast, has no means, and they both struggle with their position in society as women. And then we also have two men who are kind of reckoning with their own identity and position. Louis is a tutor, and his brother Robert is a cloth manufacturer. He sort of runs the local mill, and he's struggling massively with sort of mechanization as part of the Industrial Revolution. The people he no longer needs to hire and how that affects, you know, all of them. I have my issues with Charlotte, obviously, but I love that with everything that's going on with the mill side of things, she really explored a particular issue that was affecting lots of people at the time. The Lollards that opposed the mechanization and even destroyed machinery all around the country, you know, it's costing people jobs, machines, as we know, even now. That's all going on as well within the wider context of the Napoleonic Wars. And if she hadn't have fluffed the ending, it would have been God tier, but it's a good time still. Next is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas. I have no idea if that's how you pronounce it, sorry. D'Artagnan travels to Paris in 1625, hoping to join the Musketeers, a regiment that guards King Louis XIII. He joins the Three Musketeers, Athos, Porthos and Aramis, as they protect the king from the machinations of Cardinal Richelieu. I'm really sorry. And from the spy, Milady. This is so much fun. There's so much action, intrigue and espionage, you know, murder, anything you could want in a sort of classic adventure story. And the characters are great. It was a very solidly good time, same as last time. And next, we've got another Jane Austen. We've got Sense and Sensibility, and we are following two sisters, Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood, as they navigate the death of their father and change in their circumstances. Marianne, the younger sister, is impulsive, passionate, romantic. She wears her heart on her sleeve. And then we've got Eleanor, who's always very aware of social conventions and the scrutiny of others. You know, they both fall in love and experience heartbreak in their own way. And the way they deal with them, very, very different, as you can imagine. They have to sort of figure out how to find happiness in a world where their own prospects are working against them. You know, they are the children of a second marriage. They stand to inherit very, very little. I think the contrast between the sisters worked really, really well. You know, the cast of characters is brilliant. It is chunky, I'll say that, but definitely a good time. Next is A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is a Victorian fairy tale about the meaning of Christmas. Ebenezer Scrooge is a miser who cares about money first and foremost, with, you know, no regard for his own happiness or for others' happiness. And then all of a sudden he starts seeing ghosts, and they show him the true meaning of Christmas. It's obviously the Christmas story, very cute for my purposes at least. Again, this might be one that makes God tier with a reread, but for now it continues to be in a good time. Next up is Little Women, and we are following the March sisters, Meg, Jo, Beth and Amy, and they're living with their mother, and their father is off fighting in the Civil War. They don't exactly have a lot of money themselves, but they continue to help others. You know, they have all got hobbies to enrich their lives, and, you know, they have each other, and family is really important to them. The boy next door, Laurie, kind of shakes up their lives, and this is like it's heartwarming, emotional exploration of life at the time and expectations on women and girls and how they navigate those, but also family, love and friendship, and, you know, heartwarming but heartbreaking at the same time. It'll make you sigh, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry. It remains a good time. And next up is Belinda by Maria Edgeworth. I made a whole video about Belinda. I had such a great time reading it. Belinda has been sent to the house of Lady Delacour to be out in society and to get a husband. Belinda is very conscious that everybody thinks that, you know, she's just out of her husband. And over the course of the novel, she kind of grows up. She watches all of the debauchery that can be found in society, and that makes her stand more firm in her own sort of morality. This book shows you that Jane Austen was massively holding back on us when it comes to social commentary. Like, Edgeworth gives us the first interracial marriage in fiction, I think. A major queer character, a very wealthy Creole gentleman who is a love interest for Belinda. This is 18th century London and England and the darker side of it as well. I couldn't put it in God tier, but this is seriously worth reading. It's a very good time. You might notice that I'm in a different outfit. That is because my lighting does not last as long as I thought, and yeah, so just forgive me. Next in A Good Time is 1984 by George Orwell, and this is a story of totalitarianism. It's a dystopian novel where Big Brother is always watching you, and the thought police can arrest you for deviating from what you're supposed to think and say. And Winston Smith is the main character, and he works for a government department called the Ministry of Truth, so he's amending the past. He finds himself in the middle of a love affair, but also a rebellion. This book is a warning. It's scary, but it's incredibly well constructed and infuriating at times. But genuinely a must read, at least just to try it. But moving on to another George Orwell, which has also gone down from God tier, but it's Animal Farm. And this book is not a critique of communism, like some people seem to think it is. It's again about totalitarianism. It's an allegory with animals on a farm who were, overworked and underfed, and they take over the farm with a sort of idealistic view of what they think their life is going to be. It's going to be equal, it's going to be amazing. They've got slogans and banners, it's like a whole thing. They want to create this a paradise where everyone's equal, but obviously it doesn't end up that way. They tried to aim for communism, but certain people wouldn't let them get there. Next up is A Room with a View by Ian Forster. This has it's switched tiers with the other Ian Forster book that I love. Lucy Honeychurch is the main character, and she is English young lady. She's on holiday in Italy with her cousin Charlotte. As a chaperone, they're sort of exploring Florence and the rest of Tuscany, and they meet this sort of cast of English people also staying in the same hotel. Away from home, Lucy's exposed to a bunch of, new experiences, including, unfortunately, watching a man get murdered in front of her. But Lucy feels this tension between, the life that people want her to live and the life that she wants. She's, social expectations and propriety on the other hand, but, she's a really passionate young woman and a romantic too. And so she's kind of torn, and back in England, the differences become even more stark. It's gorgeously well written. I read this for the first time in Tuscany and in Florence, which was, I saved it because I'm like that. But yeah, the characters are brilliant. Lucy's a great protagonist. And I always say that me and my dad don't have a lot of favourite books in common, but this is one of them. Speaking of my dad's favourites, next up is The Spy That Came In From the Cold by John le Carré. This is technically the third Smiley novel, but if my memory serves, George Smiley isn't in it that much. This book follows Alec Lamus, and he's the head of the Berlin station of spies, and he watches as his last agent is shot and killed by the East German soldiers. Control who's the man who runs the sort of British spy intelligence network that Alec is a part of. He gives him an opportunity to sort of get revenge and take down the intelligence service. And this is the best le Carré out of all the three that I've read so far. Alec is a really interesting character. The way that this book unfolded was just a masterclass in spy fiction, and I can't wait to read more le Carré. Again, this is remained in the same tier. Next up is Resurrection by Leo Tolstoy. This is based on a real incident. It's the story of Ekaterina Maslova, and she's a prostitute who has been wrongly accused of murdering one of her clients. We've also got Prince Dmitry Ivanovich. He's the other main character. He had a previous relationship with Ekaterina where he had sort of fathered a child by her, but he had abandoned them both. And he has sort of ended up on the jury of her trial. Massive conflict of interest, but we'll not get into that. He is filled with remorse for what he's done, and he's trying to find ways to kind of make it right. This book is all about sort of morals and the philosophy of life and how to live your life. It's a story of humanity and, miscarriages of justice and, the state of the legal process at the time. It's not quite God tier, but it's amazing. We've got more Dickens now. This time it's Oliver Twist, which obviously follows orphan Oliver as he is living in a workhouse. He runs away to London, but finds himself in the clutches of a gang of criminals. At the time, the underbelly of Victorian London really kind of shocked readers. Obviously the cast of characters is so iconic. You've got Fagin and Nancy. Everybody knows them from the various adaptations of this book. Again, this might change with a reread, but it's solidly a good time. I put this in Overhyped last time and I felt really bad about it, so I kind of feel like this again, restoring it to its natural place. Next up is Dracula by Bram Stoker. Dracula is a sort of accumulation of diary entries, letters, newspaper clippings that chronicle the story of a vampire. Jonathan Harker is a lawyer. He has travelled to Transylvania to help Count Dracula purchase a house in London. And from his terrifying experiences, we kind of go back to Whitby and we see some bizarre goings on. A young girl finds puncture marks. She wakes up with puncture marks on her neck. Dracula and Van Helsing, for example, are just two characters that have completely transcended, I think, in my opinion, the book that they're a part of. And this is, again, one of the OG horror novel. This is one of the OG horror novels. Bram Stoker just, did an amazing job. I really enjoy the way that it used different methods of telling the story. I just had a great time. I was toying with God tier for this, not gonna lie. I think with a reread that actually might change, but for now, solidly a good time. Next up is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. Esther Greenwood is beautiful, talented, intelligent. The Bell Jar sort of chronicles her emotional breakdown in such an evocative way. Like, if you are struggling with your mental health, I would not recommend reading this because it is so evocative and so strong at representing what exactly a mental breakdown feels like. I wouldn't want to, traumatize yourself further. It's a shocking read, but it's relatable and very intense and very emotional, so be careful. I don't think I can bring myself to reread it, quite honestly, but, a good time for the purposes of this tier list. Next, we've got The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. If you watched Gossip Girl, you might remember that they did a play of this in season 2. This is the golden age of New York. Newland Archer is about to marry May Welland. He's about to propose to her when he meets Countess Ellen Olenska, recently returned to New York after a failed marriage. May is beautiful, conventional, very traditional, and the perfect wife in society's eyes, but he's, drawn to Ellen in a way that he can't explain. And in a world where scandal can just completely ruin your reputation, it's the worst thing that can happen to you. Archer's having to choose how he's going to live his life, and I really enjoyed this. I can relate very little to high society people, but obviously internal conflicts like that are completely universal, and the struggle to be yourself and to find your identity and to have courage to live the life that you want is, again, very universal and relatable, and it's not God tier, but it's a good time. And finally, in this tier, we've got Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. If you're looking for an anti-war book, then this is the one. It combines historical fiction sort of based on his own experiences as a prisoner of war and also science fiction. Billy Pilgrim finds himself in the middle of the bombing of Dresden in World War II, and he's survived the sort of deadliest battle in the Second World War, and this novel explores PTSD, violence and war with dark humour and also really vivid writing. Again, not quite God tier, but fascinating. Now we're finally onto the God tier, the highest tier, and the first book in this tier is, of course, a Jane Austen novel. It is Persuasion. Now, Persuasion is very underrated in my opinion. It's, Jane Austen chronicling what happens when the guy who you rejected when you were a teenager because other people were telling you he's not rich enough, he hasn't got enough status. What happens when he comes back into your life and now he's got money and status and he doesn't seem to want you. Second chances, standing up for what it is that you actually want in life, resilience, they all shine through. I love Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth. Very, very deserving couple in God tier. I can't believe I put it in good time last time. It's genuinely one of my favourite Austen novels, I think. The more I reread it and the older I get, just solidly up there. Next up, we got some E.M. Forster, and it is Howard's End. Howard's End chronicles the state of England through 3 different families of various different classes. We've got the upper class intellectual Schlegels, the sort of new money, colony money Wilcoxes, and then we've got the working class Basts. Through their various interactions with each other, we kind of see different worldviews butt up against each other. The Schlegel sisters, even amongst themselves, the two of them, they find, they have very different feelings about how to help the working class, both of which are very different from the Wilcoxes. This book has great characterization. The social commentary is on point. and the prose itself is genuinely some of the best that I've ever read. God tier all day. This novel has moved up to its rightful place from a good time, and I've got a whole video about this book coming up, so watch out for that. Next up is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, and Mrs. Dalloway is the pinnacle of stream of consciousness writing. She completely disregarded the sort of normal novel form when writing this. You follow the characters as their inner monologues as they go about their days. You know, you skip from one character to another and then back again. Clarissa Dalloway is the main character though, and she's throwing a party in the evening, and we kind of see throughout the day her inner thoughts and inner monologues and her insight, and other people who she encounters, their insights into life and their world. And it's just, we've got grief explored, trauma, love, heartbreak. You know, her style in this is so lyrical. She's like no other writer. I think she can bring out emotion in a way that very, very few other writers can. She's just a queen. It's very unique. Definitely God tier. I don't know what I was thinking putting it in Overhyped before. You know, folly of youth, she says, when she was 3 years ago. Yeah. Next up is another peak Jane Austen. In fact, the peak Jane Austen, probably, in my opinion. It's Emma. Emma is always God tier. This is definitely her best written novel, technically speaking. Our heroine is Emma Woodhouse. She's the daughter of the sort of local big house at Highbury. She's beautiful, witty, intelligent, but confident, but she's also vain, spoilt, and, you know, bit of a know-it-all. She's a matchmaker who likes to sort of pair up people, but when you think you have the right to do that, at 20 years old, she's in for a couple of rude awakenings. I'll say that. Her love interest, look, I love them, but you know, it is her brother-in-law. Their siblings are married. You know, it's friends to lovers. However, the age gap is not great. But look, I have to remove my morals for them because I love this book so much. Next is I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. It's one of my favourite childhood books. It's a coming of age novel where we've got two sisters, they're living in a castle, you know, castle partially ruined with their eccentric family. You know, their dad is a one-hit wonder author, they've got a younger brother and a very bohemian stepmother. You know, it's them figuring out their place in the world, you know, their position in society as women and coming into their own individual femininity and womanhood, and how that is rocked by two very handsome bachelors who come and stay nearby. It's not necessarily a romance though, I would say. It's fundamentally about the family and about Cassandra, who's the main character, and sort of growth and finding your place and growing up and becoming an adult. And yeah, I mean, God tier then and now. Finally, I've put Pride and Prejudice where she belongs in God tier. I'm sorry, it was a good time last time. The romance between Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy is just one of the best. Elizabeth Bennet is up there with my favourite heroines, definitely, for sure. There's that Tumblr meme where it's like, Mr. Darcy, you know, Elizabeth doesn't change Mr. Darcy. He gets told some home truths and he changes his, you know, goddamn self, which is so true, and it's a reason why I love it. This is, you know, perfect comedy of manners. We've got the social commentary, which is on point, and also like very much how I've grown to love Emily Gilmore more with time. Mrs. Bennet, I resonate more with every year because, you know, tell me why. Like, she's the only one taking seriously that there are 5 daughters that need to find, like, it's not just marriage, it's like a home, because they'll be kicked out of their home, and money and financial security. Like, she is the only one thinking about this, while Mr. Bennet just sort of sits there and reads in his study. He's not taking it seriously at all. And it's, you know, he didn't save enough money for them to have good dowries, and he doesn't seem to care or feel the urgency. And then he makes fun of her for actually caring. So, oh, Mr. Bennet, when I catch you. And next is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Frankenstein is a gothic horror. It's like the OG gothic horror. Victor Frankenstein plays God and creates this creature using science. However, this doesn't go to plan, and the events of this book kind of really torture Victor as, you know, he reckons with what he has done. And, you know, we're exploring humanity, we're exploring friendship, love, hubris, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Mary Shelley just created such a masterpiece work with this. I truly didn't think it was going to be as good as it was when I read it, but God tier all day. Next is the goat of all goats. It is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. This is one of my favourite books of all time. Anne Bronte gives us the story of what happens when you marry someone and you realise, and it's too late, that you are stuck in an abusive marriage with someone who is a physical, mental, emotional abuser, an alcoholic who truly does not care about anyone other than himself. We start the novel with Helen, she's found a way to get out of this situation, but because of the legal status of women at the time, which is what's so genius, this novel explores so much in terms of the position of women within a marriage, within a family, as a parent. Legally, she had very, very few rights, and so Helen has to kind of find a way to make money to, technically she's kidnapping her own child because the child is her husband's property. Oh, it's just so good. It's so good. Helen is an amazing protagonist. This whole book is incredibly well written, and it's a great view into 1850s England. Just God tier. Next is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which is a coming-of-age story set in the 1930s. Sort of, we're in the middle of the Great Depression, the Jim Crow South. Scout Finch is a young girl, and we kind of see the world through her eyes. So we see, the beauty of where she lives, but also the terrible evil and inequality that is around her on a daily basis. And her father is a local lawyer who ends up representing a black man who's been wrongfully accused of just a horrific crime. And he's risking his social standing, his safety, his reputation to do this. And it's just brilliant. It's, it'll grip you throughout. It'll tug on all of your emotions. Just God. And next is The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. What can I say about The Lord of the Rings, really? I mean, it's a tale of hobbits, elves, men, dwarfs, wizards working together to defeat an evil being who wants to take over the world. I mean, Middle-earth is, obviously based on a different England and heavily inspired by the Midlands. And this follows The Hobbit. Obviously, you don't have to have read it though. The prose is beautiful. There are so many characters who are just, some are better written than others. I'll give you that. But it's one of the best fantasy novels ever written for a reason, and it's God tier always. And now I kind of want to rewatch the movies, because it's about that time of year. Next up is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. There has been a lot of talk about Wuthering Heights, thanks to the Emerald Fennell adaptation, because this novel is on most people's God tier, I probably would say. I mean, this is a story about race, class, gender, and how that plays out in the interpersonal relationships between two families in Yorkshire. The main characters are Heathcliff and Cathy. They're drawn together because of their marginalisation in different ways by society. Cathy by her gender, Heathcliff by his racial othering. And we follow them as they grow up and their lives get tangled up with each other's, and passion, trauma, generational cycles of abuse are so well executed. This novel has style and substance, and it's just so God tier. Next is A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. I have to say, before I knew what Woody Allen was, I really enjoyed watching Midnight in Paris, and part of why was because that idea of, seeing Hemingway and Fitzgerald and Picasso and all of these people being friends and getting to be into that world for a minute. This book is kind of a set of short stories, essentially, that kind of depicts his life in Paris, his friendships, his relationships, things like that. It's really funny. It's really well written. Better than any of his novels that I've read so far. I've only read a few, so this might change, but it's definitely proving its place here, just like last time. Next up, I got a couple of Tolstoys. The first is Anna Karenina, which is, probably one of the best novels ever written. Anna Karenina is in a passionless marriage to a minor government official. She comes to visit her brother who's, having marriage problems, and she meets Count Vronsky, who is a dashing officer. And, the writing is incredible. Tolstoy is just a master at showing, on the one hand, Russian sort of upper class society and the people that populate it and that kind of social commentary, but on the other showing the deep inner world of all of his characters. I mean, one character, Levin, for example, has a chunk of the book where he's kind of exploring, life on his estate as a huge landowner and reckoning with, having all this land and power and serfs and deciding to do something good, about that. And I have a character guide for this book on my YouTube channel that I'll put a link to in the description. But it's Oh, God tier. And then we got War and Peace, which chronicles the lives of various members of the Russian aristocracy through the Napoleonic Wars. Again, in my opinion, one of the best novels ever written. It's historical fiction, essentially. It, follows some of the characters as they go off and fight in the wars, some that are, staying behind. Natasha Rostov, for example, she's 14 years old at the start of the novel, and, we watch her grow up, fall in love, experience heartbreak, navigate her various relationships with her family. Pierre Bezukov is the illegitimate son of, the biggest landowner in Russia, and he's struggling to find his place in society, and that's just two of them. I mean, you won't regret picking this up. It's just ultimate God tier. And it's not as intimidating as you would think. I've got a character guide on my channel. I'll put another link. Just, give it a chance. Next is A Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Again, this is a masterpiece. It's a novel that answers the question of, like, what would you do in exchange for eternal youth and beauty? And Dorian Gray makes a bargain to do just that. And only a portrait of him betrays the signs of his, debaucherous lifestyle that he's leading. This is a chronicle of someone sort of coming to terms with what he's done and his own morality and, those around him. And it showcases the darker side of Victorian society, just perfectly executed, God tier, just like last time. A new entrant to the rankings is White Nights by Dostoevsky. Straight to God tier. I made a whole video on this, so I highly recommend you go checking that one out. This is a novella about a man who falls in love with someone at first sight and kind of follows over a series of nights, and the writing, the inner monologue, chronicling the pain and the loneliness, and, both of their stories actually, as, and their quests to find happiness, after trying and failing to read Crime and Punishment and The House of the Dead, this really showed me how brilliant Dostoevsky can be, and I'm ready to plow on and read The Idiot, finally. And finally, the last book in this tier is A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr. This book has been upgraded to God tier. Tom Birkin is a veteran of the Great War. His marriage is over, and he's travelled to the village of Oxgodby in Yorkshire to restore a medieval mural that is in the parish church. During this time, he's living in the bell tower. It's the height of summer, there is nothing like the English countryside in the summer. I'll give us that. I mean, Wales also, but, I haven't been to Scotland. I haven't been to Ireland since I was a very, very young child. I'm, before anyone comes at me. While he's restoring the mural, he's kind of restoring himself. Obviously, he's got, massive trauma from the war, and, he finds this new attachment to life, and the prose is just beautiful. It's so poetic, and the imagery is just brilliant, and it's such a quick read also. So if you're looking for something short but impactful, this is a really good book. This is editing me realising that I got so caught up in the lighting and having to film things twice that I forgot to make an outro. So thank you for watching. I just want to say, if you've been supporting my channel in any way, by watching, by liking, by subscribing, by just interacting, I want to say thank you. This has been so much fun. I really enjoy making these videos, and I have got a bunch of great videos coming up before the end of the year that I can't wait to kind of get started on. As always, let me know exactly what you think about my rankings. What would you do better? What do you think about all of these different books? And are there books that you think I would like or other people would like? As always, let me know. And yeah, if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And I make videos all about books, history and culture, so do subscribe if you would like to. I guess if you've made it this far, any emoji is great. Book emoji, great. So yeah, I'll see you next time. Happy reading.